Hey, what's up, buddy?
What's up?
What's going on? What's going on?
Nothing much. You know what always excites me about that video is like watching back at that video,
Yeah.
and there's always like with like 20 or 30 seconds left that shot of Jess, and I just think to myself, without this show, my website is nowhere near where it is today, and I don't have a social media person, and I don't have like any of that. It just reminds me of that every time.
Well, real quickly, because we had a little technical difficulties, and that seems to be the nature of the beast lately. I see our guest is in the green room, and we'll bring her in just a couple moments. So, Ashleigh, thank you for hanging in there, and we'll get you in here in just a second. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to chat a little bit right beforehand. So, I just want to let you know we see you there, and we're going to get you in here with us in just a minute. So, thank you, everybody, who joining us tonight for Wedding Business Growth, another exciting episode of Wedding Business Growth, and we'll get the advertisements out of the way first. So if you haven't joined our text club to know when we're going live, be sure to text your name. That's all you really need to do. Just text your name to that number above, and we'll get you on our text list. And that way, when we have an announcement or when we have a show going live, we can text you and let you know that it's happening. Otherwise, we won't bug you to death. Promise. What else?
Or maybe we will.
Maybe we will. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we have a little bit too much Jameson one night, who knows? You might get a lot of text from us,
Dude, so wait a minute, hold on. So there's like drunk texting, right? Mm-hmm. And then there is drunk mass texting through your text club, which could end up very bad.
I want to try to like start hashtag drunk. Would you say drunk mass texting? Yeah. So maybe we can start a hashtag doing that. I don't know.
Mass drunk. I'm gonna get a T-shirt.
Yep.
I'm telling you.
Hashtag drunk mass texting. I don't know that I could say that if I had a bottle of Jameson either, but that's difficult to say.
So what's up, man? How was your weekend?
Let me tell you about my weekend.
Oh, we both got stories, so I'm excited.
So first of all, when I woke up this morning, I didn't even know what day it was, because me and Nick, who as you can evidently see by the screen, that he's not here with us this week. He is once again out on location doing something probably exciting and fun. He's in Nashville right now. But prior to that, we were in Orlando, and we were working at the Premier Orlando show, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, nails and hair and that type of industry, like one of their biggest trade shows. So we were working with our friends at Revlon and C&D, and we were DJing in their booth for the trade show. And then they had like they have this they call it I really should know this off the top of my head, but it's like a competition for nails, and they have like this is their 9th season, and they narrow it down to three finalists, and then they pick a winner. And so they did that awards on Sunday night, and we were producing that for them. So that was a lot of fun doing that. And just really, it was, first of all, it was one of those days where like 18 hours went by like nothing. And you're like, wait a minute, where did all that time go? But your feet could feel it. We were at the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando. So if you've never been there, it's like one of the biggest convention centers in the world. And of course, like the ballroom that we were doing the award show in was on the 4th floor on one side of the convention center. The trade show booth was on the 2nd floor on the other side of the convention center. And then the room at the hotel we were staying in was all the way around to the absolutely last possible other side of the hotel room that you could have on the 9th floor. So that was kind of our path for 2.5-3 days. Probably logged about 70,000 steps, but it was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of cool people there, a lot of just an interesting world for sure. And what really was the most interesting thing to me was seeing like a bunch of grown men with like beards and not mustaches, and tattoos, and just like these very masculine men like going crazy in the audience watching a guy like cut like a tribal something in somebody's head or something like that. I'm just like, that is so interesting to watch that. But these people were all into it, man.
You know what? I might actually have had a friend there.
Maybe.
I feel like my buddy went down last week to a convention. I didn't realize that's what it was, but he's a DJ. That's like his second love, but his first love is like barber. And he also does, I think it's called SMP, which is basically like where they will like, and you might have seen stuff like that there. I don't know, but it's basically where like guys with thinning hair, they'll like come through and they'll like basically tattoo like black spots on their head to like make it look and appear like it's fuller than it is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely probably saw SMP, S&M. I saw all kinds of crazy stuff when I was there, man. It was literally like every walk of life that you could ever imagine. It was super cool, really was. I was really, and apparently that industry is like $1 trillion industry, man. Like there is a lot going on in that industry. Yeah.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, all of those things won't go away, right? People will always want them. And I, in some ways, probably more people than ever nowadays, right? There's way more guys that are not just heading to like a regular barber anymore, and they're going to barbers that can cut hair differently than before, and it's becoming like a bigger thing. So, and then I'm sure with makeup, you said makeup too, right? Makeup and nails.
Mostly nails. I mean, I think there was, because there was like Ulta or whatever. They were there. It was just all like that whole beauty and hair and all that stuff, man. It was really cool. It was really neat. And interestingly enough, that I found out that industry was one of the industries that didn't take a big dip during COVID. And it's for an interesting reason that you wouldn't think, because what happened is that like the nail polish and all of that kind of stuff, like that part of the industry took a dip, obviously, because people weren't going out and so on and so forth. But then the industry took an uptick in home hair coloring products, right?
Makes sense.
Because people were at home and they had to still look good on video and all this other stuff, and they couldn't go out and get their hair colored or those kind of things done. And so that part of the industry kind of balanced out the nails and some of the other things that that kind of declined, you know. And I just in this moment realized we were two grown men talking about nails and hair going up and down, and this is just
you know what? I'm cool with it.
And we haven't said one thing about sports yet tonight.
Yeah, it's okay because my story, which probably will take up the last little bit of time pre bringing the guest forward,
Fair enough.
is so I'm about to be like 100% authentic with everybody, and this is a wedding business thing fully, and everyone will have felt this pain before, and I'm just going to be authentically me and tell the story because you know what? Like we all make mistakes, right? So, did a wedding this weekend. Lovely wedding. Definitely some challenges, not so much for what I do, right? The DJ world, but definitely some other vendors were feeling some challenges. So we get to the point in the night where we're going to play the parent dances, right? And the bride had chosen I Loved Her First, right?
Okay.
Super popular song, right? Everyone's heard it. Mm-hmm. It's by Heartland, right? Of
course it is.
Of course, yeah, right?
I probably could already tell the story from here, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, you can probably. I'm sure.
Where you're going. Go ahead.
Yeah. So super popular song. Looked at the planning form. Saw I Loved Her First. This is easy. Know exactly what song we're talking about. The bride is at some point in her life did professional dancing. I don't think like to the point where she was like a professional dancer, but definitely more capable of dancing than you and me. Or I don't know about you, but me for sure.
I got 2 left feet, man. It ain't happening.
Yeah, right. That's why we're behind the DJ booth.
Yep.
So press play. Looking back on the moment now, caught not looked at me, but the bride and the dad were on separate sides of the dance floor. I was supposed to wait until they positioned. I did. Press play. I noticed them look at each other funny, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. Yeah, totally played the wrong version of the song. 100% the right version of the song was listed on the form that they wanted. Did not say Heartland. It's one of those songs that, like, in my head, I see I Loved Her First, and it's just like, yeah, got it. No problem. Know exactly what's... Long story short, bride's mom comes over to me after the parent dances are over. Once we get into the open dancing, which was shortly after, and she is extremely bent out of shape. So much so that I thought everybody was bent out of shape. Come to find out later in the evening, after I made sure to apologize, right? Because hey, I'm owner of the mistake. That's fine. Come to find out, the bride had absolutely no issue with it, like at that level. Was thanking me for such a great evening, all of the above, right? But in that moment, that mom definitely made me feel like it was a bad thing from everybody. Also came to find out that the father, who I never had a chance to talk to because he was like chopping it up with like all of his buddies that were at the wedding the whole time, had just about as little of an issue with it as the bride did. It was the right song, right? They still got to do their choreographed dance. I think there was like 1 or 2 moments where she had to like on the fly adjust what they had practiced to make it work timing wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, long story short, right? 2 things. 1, if you're a DJ, make sure you look at those details. And 2, like just take a little bit of ownership. You probably find out it wasn't a huge deal as long as it wasn't like one of those moments that is irreplaceable, which I thought this was, but to her, it wasn't as big of an issue. Yeah. So yeah, man, I mean, I felt terrible. They were extremely particular with how they wanted certain things, not the couple, but just the whole group in general. So I really thought it was going to be like an extremely like big deal to the bride. So much so that I had prepped the venue for like later in the evening, if we needed to like redo it, like I would just redo it. And the bride like absolutely wasn't that worried about it. But yeah, that was my weekend.
So I've had a similar situation happen to me, and I'll keep it really short here, but very similar situation happened to me where it was that Tennessee Whiskey song by Chris Stapleton. And to my knowledge, there's only one Chris Stapleton, there's only one Tennessee Whiskey, and there's only one way he ever recorded it, right? And so it's almost this identical story that you just told me. They go out on the dance floor, they get set, I hit play, they start doing the dance, and then all of a sudden, about 45 seconds into the dance, they just completely stop.
Oh.
And then they walk over to me, and they're like, "This is not the right one. This is not the right song." And I'm like, "This is Chris Stapleton, Tennessee Whiskey. This is the only version of this song that exists." And they're like, "No, this is not the right one." So long story short, they somehow were practicing with some edited YouTube video that somebody like edited on their own and then uploaded to YouTube. And I'm thinking, why in the world would you ever think that I would know that that's what you used? You know, now moving forward, I always ask that now. If they're doing like a choreographed dance, I'm like, where did you get the song that you're practicing with? Where did that come from? Did it come from YouTube? Did it come from here? Did it come from there? Did you buy it? Is the actual song from the CD? All of these other things. Because you're right, you know, sometimes it's just things that you wouldn't think about, you know. And I'm like freaking out because I'm asking everybody that's anywhere in earshot of me, have you ever heard of another version of Tennessee Whiskey by Chris Stapleton other than what I just played? And everybody's like, no, it's the only one I know. You know?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. So we ended up like redoing it later, kind of like you suggested, and we ended up redoing it later for them, and they showed me, and you know, I had to do the old auxiliary cable and plug it into my computer so I could play that stupid YouTube video. And by the way, if you watch this and you're not in the industry, it is not legal for us to do that. So please don't ask us to do it. It's not legal for us to do that. Right? If you're not, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're not in the industry. So anyways, but you know what? The other thing about that is the other thing about that is that whenever we do training with people on our staff, I kind of have this trick question. I always ask them, like, what is the most important thing to a couple at their wedding? And they give you all these different answers. And I'm like, actually, the most important thing is the one thing you do wrong. That's always going to end up being the most important thing. And it might be to mom, like in your scenario, the bride and the dad were like, yeah, whatever. And it sounds like they were very professional and sloughed it off. And they stayed and they did the dance, like you said, made a couple of little adjustments. And if nobody would have said anything, the audience would have never been the wiser. They would have probably never known. But mom, it sounds like, was the one that had the issue with it. And what do you do?
Yeah, no, I mean, and the thing is like, she was kind of looking at me like wanting a solution. And I'm just like, I mean, at least for the moment that we just created, I don't have a solution. I can't go backwards, unfortunately. You know, part of me almost wishes I would have pressed play on the wrong song. So they would have been like, said something in a way, like, but because there was a videographer. So like it's captured with the wrong song, you know? But, well, with the wrong version of the song. But yeah, man, I was personally, like, I was shook, you know, hundreds of weddings, right? The never played the wrong song in a moment like that before. Bound to happen. No one's perfect, right? But definitely avoidable because I just didn't even read right past the dash Patrick Feeney, who I've never even heard of before.
Happens all the time. Well, that's a good story, man. It's great. You know, that's a great education point, and it's a good learning point to anybody. You know, just we have to pay attention to the details. And I think, you know, the more you do your job, the more you are, you know, like you could do it in your sleep. Sometimes these are the kind of things that can happen. You know, and so it's smart to check and then double check again. And normally, once you make a mistake like that and you get pinched by it, you typically don't ever make that mistake again.
That will never happen again.
But in the same breath, if we can help people from not making the mistake in the first place, then that's an even better thing. So
that's the goal. Yep.
All right. Well, let's move on, man. Let's move forward and let's have a chatty chat with our guest tonight joining us, because I really want to I really have been looking forward to talking to her. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to my buddy John at iLux Event Support for this cool hat, man. I appreciate him hooking me up with the cool hat. And I'm going to try to see if I can get you one too, man. He's local, so it was just easier for him to give it to me. But yeah, man. So thank you, John. Appreciate it. I love it, man. I promised him that I was going to wear it on the show. All right, so here we go. We're going to talk with our guest here now. It is time. So joining us tonight is Ashleigh Pritchard, and Ashleigh is a professional watercolor artist and the owner of CharmCat. After earning her bachelor's degree in studio art from McDaniel College, she worked as a graphic designer for a few years before deciding corporate life wasn't for her. I know all about that. She does art commissions, custom stationery, art licensing, and owns a greeting card line. Hence, one of the things we're talking about today, diversified income. Ashleigh resides in Martinsville, Virginia, probably not too far from you, right? And with her paleontologist husband and 2 spoiled cats. So without further ado, please help us welcome to the show, Mrs. Ashleigh Pritchard. Hey, Ashleigh, how are you?
Hi, good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for joining us, and sorry for probably a little bit of technical difficulties as we were trying to get the stream set up, and then something happened with the link, and we had to do another one. Anyways, we appreciate you joining us.
It all worked out.
So, Frank, how close are you guys to each other?
Martin.
I mean, not on screen, by the way, like really in like real life.
Yeah, no. I don't know exactly how close Martinsville is, but I live in like right near Stanton, so like kind of near Charlottesville. Well, in between Charlottesville and Harrisonburg. Yeah. So
it's about 2.5 hours. That's about our halfway point between Martinsville and DC.
Cool. So yeah, so you're down more. I've got some family. Well, my wife's got some family down in that direction, kind of like past Roanoke, I'm guessing, right?
Yep. You go down to Roanoke and turn off and go due south like you're going to Greensboro.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, you know what? Roanoke's like a really cool area to go visit. Their downtown is super, super nice. Lots of good places to eat.
Yeah, it is. And we moved here about 3 years ago. And that did affect, how I have grown and expanded my business, because I moved from a metropolitan area in DC to a very rural area. And that kind of changed how I had to approach my business and my income.
I absolutely love that, you start talking about diversification, you talk about, talking about, like passive income. I think it's a phenomenal subject. And I think it's something that as an independent business builder, it's definitely, something that will allow you to get through lean times. Like I remember a lot of times for me, when I was younger in my business, I first started my business during lean times, I would just go get a part-time job somewhere for a little while. And it was like one of those things where like, I don't even honestly really care if I get fired or not. Like I'm just doing this as long as I can do it until I lose my mind and either get fired or quit. And I didn't know anything about passive income back then, and it's not like it's this new thing. I just think it's something that has become a lot more known, I would say, in kind of a younger demographic of people. And I think for a while, a lot of opportunities that would be deemed like passive income were a lot of like maybe network marketing things and stuff like that. And then people were like, oh, that's a pyramid scheme. And then you got to deal with all that conversation and everything. But it's really transitioned beyond that. And so that's, I think, a little bit what we can dive in tonight. But I think before we do that, I know one of the topics that you had mentioned about wanting to dive into a little bit is about finding your common thread. And I'd really love to kind of get your take on that first, and then we'll go from there. And before we jump into that, I just want to remind everybody watching, feel free to drop comments. If you have questions or comments, let us know where you're checking in from. We will definitely get to those during the show, but Ashleigh, take it away.
Yeah. So one of the hardest things about trying to expand your business is trying to figure out, well, what do you do and how do you make it work with what you're already doing? Yeah. And I call it the common thread, but it has, it's more than just what is your product or service. It's about more than what your end product is that you're giving to your client. It's more in line with the why of your work. Okay. What about doing that work makes you happy? What is the emotion that you're trying to give to your client? And what is your skill set? Are you Do you specialize in using a certain type of camera? Like, do you do film camera, and that, gives you a different look than the digital? Or maybe as a planner, you really specialize in finding, the offbeat vendors to help your clients. What is the thing that sets you apart from the other people in your category? So a lot of that, involves thinking about, thinking about your why, thinking about your value proposition. And a lot of this stuff, I think, if you're working on your marketing language and have a social media strategy, you should already have a lot of this stuff, like thought out and set aside in a document, something that you can refer to that sort of helps you center yourself as you make business decisions.
Yeah.
So for me, I like making people feel good about who they are. So I do that with my wedding invitations, which is the first thing I started doing, by really personalizing it and letting people feel good about what type of wording or artwork they wanted on the invitation, and that the decisions that they made were personal to them. The invitations were not for their guests. Their guests get invitations, but the invitation is really for them.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I took that idea, and I've branched out to trying to do the same, create the same emotional resonance with doing the commissions, by really helping to capture what's important to the client in the painting I do for them. And then as I did my product line, I started coming up with phrases and artwork that I thought were really emotionally honest and that really connected with people, so that they have that same sort of smile and like, I feel seen reaction, no matter what sort of aspect of my business they're working with me through.
A lot of continuity in each one of them. I can definitely hear that immediately.
Yeah, so it takes, some thinking, maybe some, word clouding, or asking friends and family what they think your common thread is, or what they think your why is, to try and find that. But then once you find that, it's like a guiding light for helping you decide where to branch out next.
I love that, because I think, especially in the wedding industry, right? People, right, you get into it for all sorts of different reasons, but most of us, of course, at heart are creative, right? In some way, whatever that way is. And it's one thing to be able to create, but it's another thing to be able to identify the why you create, and then that leads you, or in this case for you, it led you directly to all of these different products and services that you present to your potential clients. And I think that is incredible. And it's probably a challenge. How did you what for you specifically? You mentioned talking to friends and family and trying to figure it out. What was that aha moment for you? What got you there to that common thread?
I don't know if there was an aha moment. It's kind of something that I slowly had to tease out for myself. When I started, I offered a completely different style of artwork, and had a totally different way of ordering, and my goals were different than my goals now. And so as my business has evolved, I've had to narrow it down and say, this is my niche, this is my style, this is like the personality of my business. And so for me, adding my extra revenue streams has sort of just been a part of that evolution. Part of it was finding out what made me different. When I first started, I didn't have anything that was a differentiator, like why someone should use me instead of that other invitation designer. And then as I got to know the industry and started seeing what other invitation designers were doing, I was like, well, wait a second. I'm a watercolor artist and I actually paint my stuff, which isn't something a lot of other artists do. And that means I can paint totally weird stuff for people. And that sounds like so much fun. So I started doing some styled shoots and stuff that let me really get creative. And then from that, you can start to find the clients that fit what you want to do. And for me, it was just kind of a process of finding like what really makes me happy about why I'm doing this.
I love that. And I think, you mentioned earlier about, kind of having that document to kind of refer to and refer back to. And I think it's worth mentioning that document can definitely be like a living document. And you kind of gave an example of that where, your style and your why and all of those kind of things kind of changed as you evolved and grew, not only as a person, but also as a business owner. And so that document probably had changes, either scratch throughs or erases and different things like that in it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's the beauty of being able to have something that's like a living document like that, where as you evolve, it can evolve along with you, and it can continue to help keep you centered, even if the centering purpose is something that maybe wasn't originally, it may not have been that originally 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a year ago, maybe even. But where you are in your life now, where you are in your business now, this is what helps you get centered now. So I think that's awesome that you brought that up to do that. I'm curious, like you mentioned, you like to paint weird stuff. What would you, is there something that you would say is probably the weirdest thing you've ever painted?
Well, so I don't know if it's the weirdest thing I've ever painted, but it's definitely kind of become like the mascot version of like how I do my business and like the type of jobs that I want. A few years ago, I created a wedding invitation for a client that was otherwise fairly traditional, lots of florals, purple, navy blue, some, your classic script font. But they had a personal request, which was they wanted a squirrel in the invitation somewhere. Not super prominent, but just sort of hiding somewhere. It had to do with their new last name, and it had a personal meaning for them. And I was like, oh yeah, let's do this. This is going to be great. So I painted this little, really adorable squirrel. And we put him on the envelope liner and on the RSVP card, and on their thank you cards. And so he kind of was like running through the flowers. And it was great. And that little squirrel guy has become one of my most popular art pieces. And I use that a lot when I'm talking to clients, when I'm trying to encourage them to think of what they can do for their invitations that will make them super unique and super personal and have actual meaning for them. And that was like one of my ideal projects that I did.
Yeah, I think doing stuff like that is so cool, and I feel like it helps your client hopefully realize and understand that you have a vested interest in the success of their event, and you're not wanting to just whether it's a product like an invitation, or whether it's a video, or whether it's music services like Frank and I provide. It's not just this cookie cutter thing every single time. It's just like a factory of just doing stuff. And so I love any kind of stuff like that. And sometimes you can take something that was like special and important to one couple, and I think you can even pass that on. A perfect example, I just did a wedding recently where this couple, they kind of like tricked their guest by asking them what their first dance was at their wedding. Like all of the couples that were going to be coming to their wedding, they asked them what their first dance song was, but they told them the reason why they were asking them is because they were having a hard time deciding on what first dance song they wanted to pick, and they wanted to get some ideas from their friends and maybe one of them would, jump out at them. But what they really ended up doing was giving us the list of all of those songs, and we ended up playing them during dinner time. So dinner time was every song during dinner was somebody in the room's first dance song at their wedding. And I just thought how kind of a unique thing that you just don't see all the time, and that was just a really cool experience to be a part of, because you would quickly be able to identify which couple whose song was playing, because they would either look at each other and goo goo and gaga, or they would get up and go on the dance floor and dance and everything. And it was just neat. It was a really unique experience.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. And David, you and me are completely on the same wavelength. I was going to ask the exact same question about what the most unique or random thing that was ever painted was. So yeah, I think our active listening skills are starting to align, sir.
Yeah. Well, it makes me also think, is there anything anybody's ever asked you to do that you were like, yeah, that's a little too much? Does that ever come up?
The only thing that I've had to say is it depends on what your budget is. I can do anything. It's just going to cost you.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
So in the world, especially in the world of weddings and such, it's definitely going to be hard to always just survive off of one source of income. And that might not just be because of the wedding industry. It's just because of the world we live in today, right? Where one job isn't the norm anymore for a household. So, it's really important to start thinking about other income streams. And so passive income is something where, you have that ability to upfront initial investment, right? Initial plan development. But then after that, there's somewhat of a, not necessarily set it and forget it, but, where it kind of works for itself at that point. So why don't you chat a little bit with us about passive income and how you've kind of set yourself up to be able to have different revenue streams?
Yeah. So, passive income, it's not 100% passive. Of course, you have to do your work up front, and there's also maintenance work along the way. But you want to find something that doesn't eat up your time per customer, that it would take the same amount of time or almost the same amount of time if you had 10 people buy it as if you had 100 people buy it. Common ones are, like a digital download, or like an e-course, or one of my revenue streams, which is the product, which, I put in the work to design the product and create the product, and then I have it listed online, and, I do some marketing work. I'm, update it regularly when I have new product. But other than that, people are, shopping without me having to be there, and without me having to do, create something from scratch every time I get a purchase.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Just there's a lot of like different types of passive income. But the goal, the idea is that the work is all front loaded. But one of the things that you want to avoid is feeling like it has to be perfect before you launch it. Because that can be a real barrier. You want to do, the term is a minimum viable product. So think of it like you're doing a beta launch. Then you see what your kinks are, maybe upgrade a little bit, add some extra content or extra value, and then, do a relaunch, and you get it to a point where it's good, it's making income for you, and you don't have to go back and revisit it until you have some time, maybe during the off season. I think most wedding professionals sit around in November twiddling their thumbs, thinking, I need to book because that's where I get my income from. But you can use that time to develop some other income that kind of you can let it, for the most part, run itself during wedding season. and then put time into it when you have the time.
One of the things you brought up is like a e-download or like a course or something like that. And I think a lot of people, not just in our industry, but just a lot of people in general, sometimes feel like, who am I to put a course out or something like that? And I think it's worth diving into a little bit of understanding that no matter, unless you just at the very beginning of something, then this might not necessarily be applicable. But if you've had any level of experience and success, that means that there's somebody out there that wants to get to where you are, even though you probably want to get where somebody else is, which is light years further than where this other individual is. But for every person that you want to aspire to get to, there's also somebody back there aspiring. And by back there, I just mean earlier on in their career. Or if we use the examples of chapters, you might be in your chapter 6, you want to get to chapter 13, but somebody else is in chapter 1 that's nowhere close to chapter 6 yet. And that is your audience for your e-product or your course or something like that. Have you found that that's kind of what makes sense in putting those types of things together?
Yeah, I think, everyone has their skills that, the things that they're particularly good at. And like, especially if you think a little bit broader, like a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to make a course for other DJs. I'm going to make a course for other photographers. You could also think about, well, the people I already have as clients, what might they want to learn? Or you could think about utilizing a platform like a Skillshare or something where people are already there looking for something to learn, even just the basics. And what can you bring to that platform and have the platform do a little work for you?
Yeah, I think it's so difficult to find that passive income solution too. Right, a lot of people just by default, it's like rental properties is a very huge source of passive income. Right, once a year or once every so often, when you lose a renter, you go and you solution that. Right, some people are doing the Airbnb thing. Those are some of the like largest sources of that. So when you were at what point in your development of your product did you realize that not only did you have something that was going to work for you, but that it was also going to be a passive income source? Or did you kind of have to learn while you were developing it that, hey, this is actually a solution that can be a little more passive, where I can put in work at different periods of time, but it doesn't have to be an everyday thing? Like, how did you come to that realization?
Well, a lot of that came from trying to equalize my income throughout the year. I have, a couple months where like all of my clients are booking their wedding invitations and paying their deposits. And then I have some months where there's just not really much going on. And I started trying to think of, okay, what can I do, during the holidays and during the slower times during the wedding season to bring in income. And so I started doing things that could be Christmas related, commissions, and developing my product line. And so for me, I knew I needed another non-wedding related way to get some income, but I didn't want to do the part-time job. I've done that. I've done the corporate thing. I did part-time retail. There was a period where I tried to do DoorDash, and it's not fun for me. I wanted to do art. I love it. It's fun. So I really started to look for ways to take what I already had and repurpose it into a new revenue stream.
I love that. That's something. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Frank. Go ahead. Up to you.
I was actually going to hand it off to you with this too, David. This is something that David talks about all the time, which is reverse engineering, right? It's like, what is your end goal, and then work yourself backwards to get to that. And so, I mean, I love that, you started out with, I need to have a solution for these periods of time where the income is different than the rest of the year because I need something a little bit more level. And then you worked yourself backwards to saying, okay, it has to involve my art product. What can I do? And then you solution that through. I mean, I think that's a great way of doing it. And like I said, that's a David thing. David talks about doing that all the time. What's your end goal, and work yourself back.
Yeah, I mean, for me, once I realized being a go-go dancer wasn't going to make me any money, I had to really make a change. No, I'm just kidding. I have never done that, and hopefully never have to. But no offense to anybody who does, by the way. No, but seriously, I some of the things I heard you guys say in that last little segment, Ashleigh, what I love is you said, I wanted to do something that wasn't necessarily wedding related, but you didn't get so far away from the core of what you do. And you said, okay, let me take something that's like holiday related or theme related. And I know that people are going to be wanting to make purchases within that realm as well. And if I can offer a product in that realm, again, as you mentioned, you already have a built-in audience. You already have a built-in clientele base that maybe your past clients purchased these wedding invitations or different things from you. Well, you've built a trust in those clients by purchasing those products. And so being able to market another product that's, again, like holiday related or theme related is a much less barrier to the potential of a purchase, because again, they've already put their trust in you for something else. And so I think that's brilliant. And then Frank, you brought up about, like rental property or Airbnb or something like that. I think it's important for people in our industry to think about the possibility of things like that outside of our industry. Because we sometimes get so, and I've been guilty of this as well. We get really kind of pigeonholed into what can I do in the wedding business? What can I do in the event space? What else? And like as a DJ, what other services can I add? Can I add on a photo booth? Can I add on this? Can I add on that? Can I add on whatever? And it's like, but you could take all of that money and all of the investments that you're doing for all of that stuff, and you have, and you can look at that and say, well, now I have a potential to look into the possibility. And maybe it's like, for example, an Airbnb property. It may be something that you have to kind of find a business partner or something like that with. Frank, you and I, maybe individually we don't have the money extra to purchase an Airbnb, but collectively, maybe we have the money to purchase an Airbnb together. And that could be the first step to say, okay, let's get this one, let's get it off the ground. And then at that point, either we buy another one and we buy each other out of one of them, or however we make it work, or we just continue to keep being partners, if that makes sense too. But I think it's really cool to explore what else you can do beyond what your passion is, because I think most of the people that, and we've said this in past episodes, past guests have said this, and I always believe this. I don't know that anybody just like all of a sudden wakes up one day and says, Mom and Dad, I want to sit down at the kitchen table for you for a minute with you. And, I've thought long and hard about this, and I've decided that I'm going to be a wedding DJ. That's what I'm going to do for my career. Like, I don't think anybody has ever had that conversation. I think you just fell into it. It just happened, and so like we got to expand beyond just what we love.
Yeah. You have to, especially we've all now experienced what it's like to not be able to rely on the wedding industry for income for a while. And I know, that was hard. I had several months that usually are my best months of the year where I had basically no income. But I put more time into the revenue streams that I had already started, into promoting my commissions and my product line. And I actually had a better year in 2020 than I did in 2019. And I had a better year in 2021 than I did in 2020.
And that's impressive, because a lot of people can't say that. That's impressive. But that was from again, diversifying and finding these other income streams that made sense at the time, and then probably being able to kind of going into the maybe last final kind of segment of the conversation, which is scaling those things. Scaling to me is so incredible. I when you are able to grasp the how it works, it revolutionizes your thought process forever. Talk a little bit maybe about how you were able to scale those different things as you kind of went from development to creation to now scaling those things.
Yeah. So one of the big things about doing a service is there's only so many hours in a day, and you can only take on so many clients, in a month, in a year, which means that if you are only doing a service, the only way for you to increase your income is to increase your pricing. So if you want to continue to grow and continue to retain a sane work schedule and be able to, take a vacation or, have the weekend, most wedding professionals don't get their weekends off, but have, your 2 days off, whatever those 2 days may be during the week. You need to find ways that you can make money that are not based on your time, where it's not an hourly rate that you're making.
Trading hours for dollars, yeah.
Yes. So, selling product is a great way to do that. And there are multiple ways to do that. And I actually do both where I design and I order the products. And I have stock and I sell them, but I also use print on demand for certain products where I don't want to invest a ton of money in more expensive products and then have that money sitting in stock. So I use a print on demand service, which is great. You upload your artwork, you connect it to your website, and they just do all the work for you. But one of the things I think a lot of people don't consider when they're doing this is that if you're going to scale the business, even though it's not like time-based where like every client requires 3 hours of your time or something like that, there is still a small labor cost in the, ordering stock, packing orders, taking them to the post office. So when you're pricing your stuff, you need to price like you're going to end up hiring help. Don't discount your time because then you won't be able to afford to scale. If you need to hire an office assistant or an associate, you need to have that pricing already baked in.
Reverse engineer. There it is again. I
Yes.
love it.
Yeah. So you got to work backwards. So, and I wholesale some of my products as well. So I've worked both backwards and forwards. I know what my product costs and I know what I want to sell it for. And I make sure that the math in between works. If I can't make it work, I do not wholesale it. If I can't make it work for a reasonable retail margin, I look for another vendor.
You know what? That's really interesting to think about, right? Because as I've grown my business and I've expanded my services, then my pricing has had to change in ways to cover some of those things that you're basically saying, hey, look, when you start this sort of a business, you want to account for whatever it is that you might potentially need, and you need to account for it in ways that, once I hit this much, then I need to be prepared to, like you said, hire some kind of an assistant or a VA or whatever you might need. And then, kind of have those check marks. At this number, I can hire another person to do X and so forth. So I love that idea of, initially trying to determine what it is that you're going to need financially for your business to run, and then what you're going to need to support as it gets larger. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Is there ever a time, because that might be a hard thing to determine though too, right? So are there checkpoints or are there moments where you would tell somebody that they might have to kind of reassess their pricing a little more dramatically because they have a need for something that they can't afford yet?
So I know for me, I look at my pricing every 6 months. I don't always raise it at that point, but at like this time of year and at the end of the year, I pull up my books. Keep your books up to date. I know it's terrible, but you'll thank yourself when you get to tax time and all you have to do is hit print and give it to your accountant. I usually get my tax refunds like February 8th. It's great.
Nice.
But you need to know how much you're spending, how much you are bringing in, and evaluate your pricing based on that. You need it's I know a lot of people think it's boring or it's their eyes glaze over, but you need to know it's foundation for your business, and you can't add stories to your business if the foundation is not stable and can't support it. So you need to know, if your pricing is working, you need to know which revenue streams are working best for you. You need to know like where your sales are coming from. Are most of them coming from Instagram, or are most of them coming from referrals from other vendors, so that you can see what's working and what's not, and basically double down on what's working. And also, you need to know not just what you have in the bank today, but what do you expect to have in the bank in a month? Do you have a really big bill coming up and you need to, account for that? Or maybe you have a really big invoice that someone's going to pay next week and you say, okay, I'm going to take that money and put it aside and start saving for this business investment. You don't just want to be spending money on the fly and don't pick 5 passive revenue streams and jump into them all in the same month and be like, I'm gonna spend $1,000 on a membership to this site and do that. It's hard, I know, and I've done a couple of revenue streams that ended up not working out, but you want to try and go in with the best financial picture that you can, and continually reevaluate that pricing, especially I don't know if you guys deal with it at all, but I have material costs for what I do, and the costs I've been getting almost every month. Our prices are going up. Our prices are going up. Shipping has gone up, and I have to account for that, and then see okay, that's affected my margin, so now I need to raise my price to compensate.
Yeah. I think it's important to evaluate that stuff. And, I think some people get nervous about, wanting to, this is to me, this is the dirty, brutal side of business, which is you just have to be absolutely honest with yourself and realize if you're not thinking in terms of where you want your business to be versus where your business is, you're always going to be in this hamster wheel of catch up. And if you can think more about terms of where you want your business to be, that might realistically not, you may evaluate that and you may realize, okay, I can't charge, in my market, I can't charge $2,500 per event for the service that I offer. So I need to either adjust my plan, or I need to understand that it's okay if I don't hit my plan in year 1 or year 2, but I still have to be moving towards that plan, because eventually that's where I need to be. And for longevity and for stability, I've got to be there. And if you're afraid to do that, then you probably shouldn't get in business for yourself in the first place. I mean, that's really the cut and dry, easy, simple answer to that. But if you play this game which most everybody in our industry plays this game of, I'm new, I'm learning, I do blah, 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 so I'm going to charge less than everybody else. And then inevitably what happens, you charge less than everybody else, you get all of this business, you get burnt out because you can't handle all the business that you received, and then most of the time you end up moving on. instead of realizing that, maybe if you found, let's say you found a price point, I'm new, I don't know anything, so I'm just using random numbers. So you charge $900 for your service. And the going rate for that same service most everywhere else is $1,500. And you're significantly less than everybody else. Well, there's nothing wrong with maybe saying, well, let me charge $1,250. Okay, I'm not charging as much as everybody else. I'm falling into that I'm not there yet category, but I'm not so far down the line that, number one, it doesn't make sense. And number two, from a business plan standpoint, it doesn't even make sense, And
yeah,
I just wish more people did that in our industry.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I know, especially with beginners, I know even for me, I was like, why do they charge so much? That doesn't make sense to me. And you learn quickly why they do. If I wanted to make $100,000 in revenue a year and I can only take on, 50 clients, that's the price point I have to charge. It's just math. And you have to remember to account for all the costs that come along with that. Your revenue is not your income.
Thank you for saying that.
If you want to pay yourself $100,000, you should probably aim for at least 1,500 or 150,000 in revenue. If you want to hire someone, you need to keep going up.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Anybody who thinks that in order to make $100,000, you just have to charge $100,000 already needs to go to a basic business understanding class.
Yeah.
See, that you should make a course about that. There you go, Frank. You could do that. Frank, you should make a course about that, and that could be your passive income, man.
You know what? I don't know if I would be the right person. The course might be really short. It might just be exactly what was said there, because I think that's really all that needs to be said. You know what? I think most people will find out the first time they have an accountant file their taxes for them after they open a business, exactly how much money they earned for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long.
Yeah. And it's even easier if you're keeping all your accounts separate, like you should. I have, have everything for the business separate. And if I'm going to have any of that money that is my profit or, in personal income, I have to actually see it in the checking account and then transfer it to the personal account. And I'm writing myself a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And you quickly learn that there's only so much work you can do, and there's only so much you can charge for it. And that's when you hit that wall, you're going to hit it eventually if you stay in the industry.
Yeah.
And so before you hit that wall, you want to start thinking about, okay, well, what else can I do that I can increase my revenue without having to suck all of my hours out of every day. Right. And that doesn't cost as much to, run. That's actually going to give me a profit after expenses.
Absolutely.
There was so much valuable information, I think, today, that if you have watched this episode or are listening back later and you don't feel like you take anything from this, you probably need to go back and listen to it a second time, which will not only help us get another view, but will also help you hopefully open up your mind to some things that are so important when you're thinking about your business. I love today's talk. I think it was great. All the information that you provided was invaluable, and I hope that our listeners have taken a lot from it. I have a couple of completely off-topic things that I got to ask you, though. So one, I have to see the squirrel. Do you have a painting of the squirrel somewhere where we can see?
Here's Mr. Squirrel.
Nice.
Yes.
And wait a minute, that's so
realistic looking. Holy moly!
This is a giclée print.
Well, okay, explain what that is, just for
Um,
anybody who doesn't know.
it's a really expensive printer and really expensive paper.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will not be buying one to make my own squirrel anytime soon. Check.
No, but you could purchase one that's already done.
Ooh, and
That
please
looks so
let us.
realistic. I can't get over how
Does
realistic that looks.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's one of the things that sets me apart even from a lot of the other watercolor artists in the industry is um, I am a little obsessive about detail. So
Sorry,
my
Frank, go ahead,
style
man.
is very recognizable and unique. And I work with other stationery designers who don't know how to paint, who send me their clients to get stuff painted to go on their wedding invitations.
That's awesome.
And so one of the things that I can do to make my income more passive is, Mr. Squirrel here he's from a wedding invitation, but I sell the print of Mr. Squirrel, and I didn't have to repaint him. I already did it the one time, and I own the copyright to that artwork, so I can reuse it. And I have, you own assets in your business. So what else can you do with them?
Yeah, I love that, and I bet you know what? I bet you that couple probably, if I don't know if they follow you still and know that you're using the squirrel, but if they do, I would imagine that they feel like it's a pretty cool thing that their squirrel from their invitation has now become like a calling card among among your business and your clients too.
Yeah.
So, all right, second question that I got for you. Said, I think your husband is a paleontologist.
Yes.
So I got to know, like, how excited or not excited. I'm really curious. Either how excited or not excited is he for the new Jurassic Park or Jurassic World that's coming out?
He's tentatively excited. So, some of the other ones have not been great, but he's really excited by the number of different dinosaurs that are in the promo. So even if the storyline is not great, he's excited just to see a bunch of different ones, especially when they include ones that are they're real but they're not popular yet in pop culture, and then they're in Jurassic Park, and then now everyone knows what they are.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know what? That's so cool. Like, I think at some point when you're a kid, maybe not all kids, but probably most kids. I know all four of my kids have had moments where they've just been like dinosaur crazy, right? They like my daughter right now, she's got, and of course, right, she's 3 and little baby princess, she has like pink dinosaur, toys and stuff, which of course we all know isn't real. My boys have loved every single Jurassic Park and Jurassic World that's come out. Of course, like their want for a storyline is different than ours and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, when I saw the paleontologist thing, I was thinking to myself, like, now's the perfect time. I got to know, does a paleontologist want to see Jurassic World or not want to see Jurassic World?
Oh yeah, no, they like anything that popularizes, his line of work. He's all good with. And hey, if you're in Stanton, the home of the Virginia Museum of Natural History is Martinsville, Virginia.
Oh really? I didn't.
Oh yeah. And if you want to work out something, he loves giving special tours with a little bit of notice. Can take them look back in the collections room where they keep all the extra fossils that don't go out front.
Interesting.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So, I will tell my wife and we will plan a kids trip. My boys will go crazy for that kind of a thing. My 3-year-old, she'll be along for the ride, just kind of like being giggly and stuff. But my boy, especially my oldest son, man, he'll be like zoned on every single thing that's said. And we'll repeat it on the ride home, every single thing.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Ashleigh. Thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you being on the show. As Frank mentioned earlier, I think such a lot of different valuable pieces of information. And I think, we have to always walk away remembering that like the old adage says, if it was that easy to do, everybody would be doing it. And that's why business is tough. And starting a business is super tough. Maintaining a business is probably more tough. Being successful in a business is the toughest of all three. None of them are impossible, but they do take hard work, and they do take seeking out knowledge to figure out how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And that's, part of the reason why we started this show, to hopefully have wonderful people like yourself come on with us and share some of the knowledge and experience that you've had throughout your career, and hopefully being able to pass that on to somebody else, whether they want to also come up with the next Squirrel, or if they want to do something totally different in the industry, or a totally different industry, and but learn from the lessons that you shared. So thank you very much for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Frank, you want to close us out tonight, man?
Oh, well, I don't know. Do we know who's up next?
I don't. But
We don't know who's up next. But if you join the WBG Community Text Club up above, right, you can get that update once we have that all figured out. If you join our Facebook group, or if you follow us on YouTube or anywhere else, you're going to get all that information as well. Again, Ashleigh, just to echo what David said, appreciate you coming on. Lots of great information, and super excited about hopefully going through the History Museum soon with the special tour my kids will enjoy. Other than that, everybody, I hope you have a great wedding full weekend, and we will talk to you next week.